Hello and welcome back to the Transfer Flow, and on today's episode, we're previewing the Spanish Giants, starting with Atletico Madrid. They've been on a big recruitment drive, but could there be a big gear change coming down the pipeline as well? Then we've got Vinicius Jr. Is he playing for his life at Real Madrid under Xabi Alonso? Then why we're excited about Rashford at Barcelona. And finally, we ask where Rafael Leao should go this summer and why he's been left on the shelf so far. That's all on today's episode of the Transfer Flow. So hello to everybody and welcome back to another Wednesday edition of the Transfer Flow. Joining me today to run through, I think, a pretty interesting lineup, we've got Hayden Van Brewer. How you doing, man?
Yeah, doing really well. Excited for this one, Patrick. How are you doing?
I'm good. We've actually just we hope we haven't expended all our energy because we've just chatted for like half an hour before we start recording. But today I do think that we have quite an interesting lineup because we wanted to talk about the three big Spanish sides, and later on we want to come on to Rafael Leao, who weirdly has kind of fallen through the cracks of this transfer window so far. So the three big Spanish teams are having interesting summers. Barcelona have got their own challenges. Real Madrid are expecting a period of upheaval, but Atleti, who we're going to start with, have been by far the most active of these teams, right? They've spent about, once the Pubi fee gets added to the price, they spent about 120 mil so far. They've got in 5 guys plus Musso, who's coming back, plus Longley, who's joining permanently on a free from Barcelona. But that's a lot of people coming into the club. Hayden, ahead of this summer, what were the needs you had in mind for Atletico Madrid? What do you think they needed to address?
Well, I think it's important to think about some of the things that are outgoing and also some of just like the factors of the team. So like Antoine Griezmann was 4th in minutes played in La Liga for Atletico Madrid this past year. Rodrygo de Paul looks to be all but set to get his house moved to Miami so that he can hang out with Messi full time. And these are players that have really been the key sort of ball progressors, creators. Rodrygo de Paul is a guy that plays dangerous passes, difficult passes, a bit of everything. And they're going to have to replace that output. There's some really interesting profiles coming in, but this is very much a like recreate these guys in the aggregate kind of thing. And they brought in Alexander Sorloth. He hasn't really played the role I think that Atletico fans would really hope that he would play in terms of prevalence and being that, near league leading goal scorer and providing a physical presence that I think Simeone is sort of like to have for years and years up top, battering ram kind of style. Yeah. And instead they've sort of opted for this Julian Alvarez, Griezmann sort of play. As Rodrygo de Paul moves out, as Griezmann, again, we'll see what his minutes load can be this year. They're going to need to look to sort of spread that out to different options. And so some of the players coming in particular, Alex Baena and Thiago Almada are some of the players I think they're going to be looking to carry that load, but they're a little bit of a different mix there.
Yeah, shall we start in the midfield? Because the midfield, they're adding a bunch of guys all at once. And I think broadly that's smart. Yeah, like Witsel leaves, De Paul leaves. Like some of these guys, Saul finally has left permanently, right? Though he was obviously on loan last year. But it does feel, my only concern is that I think they've chucked a bunch of guys in there. And I think one of them certainly is not at the level of the others. Like Johnny Cardoso, I just think, no thanks. I don't think he's that great. I mean, I guess that he can play at a reasonable level in La Liga. So if you think, right, okay, we can field this guy against the lower teams in the division. But he, to me, when I look through this list of players, is by far the weakest one. Whereas Baena, I think, elite attacking numbers as a midfielder, a great progressive carrier, really high-end product, useful build-up player. Almada, a little bit more of an interesting one. What do you make of these three guys first? And then we can look at fullbacks and centre-backs. We could basically cover all areas of the field.
We can do a lot here. And this is an Atletico team that also has like a distinct style of play that's very different from the other two. Like, I think sometimes there's a bit made about Atletico being this team that, well, they play differently when they play Real Madrid and Barca. And I think that's actually like shifted. I think they've shifted to a team that, they play low block a lot. They maybe play a little more kind of middle block than they have in the past, where they're kind of less high or low. But I think they've kind of made things a bit more consistent. I guess if I'm going to kind of break things down a little bit more generally, Johnny
Mm.
Cardoso, I think, is a guy that can receive the ball in tight spaces and kind of help you just navigate that first bit of pressure out of the back. But I
Sure.
think there's still some serious question marks on his like a passing ability to break down a defense and move the ball through sort of the second and third lines and create things higher up the field or as play kind of progresses. I think that's sort of the question US national team fans also have of him, a number of the other midfielders in that pool. So I think that's sort of where I leave it with him. Thiago Almada is a player that sort of has been on the rise. He was exceptional in MLS. He moved then to Botafogo and to Lyon as a part of that multi-ownership group. Player that like is sort of your number 10 that likes to like combine and create and play those sort of passes. Now, I don't think like he's necessarily a guy that's going to come in and do the sort of more deep lying playmaking that DePaul does. And I think if you're going to look at Almada's passes, he's playing class passes where he's like closer and can move off players. He's not necessarily playing as many of the difficult, longer line breaking passes and variety that
Mm-hmm.
DePaul has. So you're looking at two players that have like two pieces of DePaul's game in the midfield that don't have all of it together in sort of one sort of package. So there's maybe a chance on like they're trying to diversify and say maybe one of these guys can do something different. One of these guys that each have a half of that can elevate the other part of their game and start to fill that role. But we've got different options here. Whereas Alex Baena, who's probably going to play out wide, looks to do a lot of both the like ball progressing, but also the like chance creating stuff that Griezmann has sort of been one of their key engines for these last couple of years. So I
Mm-hmm.
wonder how much of it is they're like this guy out wide who we really like can take off some of the pressure from Griezmann and some of the load from DePaul, and then give one of these other new guys a chance to sort of like make the role their own in midfield alongside a Gallagher, Barrios, some of these other guys in the midfield. So again, there's a lot of moving pieces, but and how they play and how they get from sort of A to B might look a little bit different this year. But I think it is clear that they're not trying to radically change the style of play and that they are going to try to spread out some of the responsibilities of DePaul in a slightly different way. The big question for me is like if Baena can come in and make a really big impact,
Mm-hmm.
especially from like a more wide area, can he be the one that sort of unlocks Sorloth and brings him a bit more into the fold? Because if Baena and Sorloth can take on a bit more of the responsibility for Griezmann, I think that's sort of the pathway for this Atletico team to like make a bit of a jump and really be competing with the other two giants who are, I think, have a bit of a lead on where Atletico is, at least coming into this sort of transfer window.
Yeah, and I think they have to add shots, right? Like this is an obvious place that you would want to focus. Like you look at them last season, they're taking like 12 shots per 90, which I think was seventh in La Liga. And they're better by expected goals than that, but they're still just behind Villarreal. They're in fourth. And the defense is still the best in Spain, or it was the last season by expected goals conceded. But the attack's never going to get to Barcelona level. Barcelona had genuinely like 1.5 times as much XG as Atleti. But Real Madrid were like 10-11 ahead. And you think if you can reel that in a bit and maintain your defensive advantage on those sides, then you're a real danger, and you're certainly a danger in the Champions League. I mean, it does feel with these guys that they've prioritized ball progression. Every single one of these guys, maybe Cardoso aside, like pops for ball progression. You know, Ruggeri as well, Pubi, who they hijacked Wolves for, the right back. Like all these guys look like very good progressive passers. Ruggeri is also a good carrier, and so is Pubi. So it feels like the fullbacks might be asked to do a bit more carrying here. But what's interesting about Baena and Almada is that these guys are not the defensive workhorses that we've traditionally seen Atletico
Yeah.
target. I mean, maybe they look at Gallagher and Barrios and they say, we don't care. Like those two guys, Pascadoso, like those guys are going to do enough defensively. But it's interesting for them to pick up people who are, you know, a little bit less athletic, I guess. People who are more focused on creating goals than defending. That's an intriguing move from Simeone, and you've got to say he has done the things that we've kind of wanted him to do. We've wanted him to be able to mix it up, you know, to add more varied personnel so they could play in different styles. Well, he's doing that. We also wanted them to get younger, and they're certainly doing that because Cardoso's 23, Baena 24, Almada 24, Ruggeri 22, Pobi 22. They also want Renato Vega from Chelsea, who's 21. Would love that to get done for under 40 million euros. I mean, this is going to, the average age here is 23. It's going to seriously help them because they have been one of the older sides in Spain for a long time.
Yeah, I completely agree. Obviously, you guys talked a lot about Vega on the last episode, so I don't think we need to go too in depth here. I kind of echo a lot of those opinions. I think it's really interesting, and I think one of the things that I like about this and what I see when I look at these kind of ball playing guys, because I do think there's an element here of the sort of Simeone, Atleti, I mean, it's sort of mixed at this point, isn't it? Identity. And I think that one of those is like pillars is probably something along the lines of personal responsibility. And that personal responsibility is on the defensive side and working back, being accountable to your teammates, doing the hard work to keep the team shaped together. But I think it's also offensively like willingness to run and willingness to like be trusted with the ball, that you can receive the ball in tight spaces and that guy can make a run knowing that like you're not just going to lose it and now he has to sprint back and do all the hard work to recover. And I think like that's kind of the way they're moving the needle a little bit. It's like, okay, we're going to take a little bit more and more of a risk on guys that are a bit more ball player, a bit more whatever, and hope that they can really buy into the other side of it. And then that will continue to raise our ceiling. Again, as they get younger, it's really exciting to see them doing it, not just over like the last transfer window. I think we sort of had this conversation a little bit on how are they going to get younger and do it. And they've committed to it for a multi-year strategy. So it does feel like they're taking, again, we talked about some Premier League teams and spending like their whole bag on one or two guys. And it's like that guy has to hit, taking more of these sort of 10, 15, 25 million kind of little one here, pieces kind of coming together and then letting the group shake itself into a team. I'm interested in the approach. I can see it working. I think they've mitigated a lot of the downside. The biggest question here is like, is that jump? Are they able to really make that jump? Because this Real Madrid team is stacked. This Barcelona team that can't do a ton in the transfer window is still incredibly stacked and has so much talent. So again, I think if we're looking at trying to set the expectations for this team, it's exactly what you said. Can they retain this resilience, this defensive stability, and just keep moving the needle in attack and keep improving, and not just be improved on day one, but be improved halfway through the year and look back at the end of the season throughout the year and go, we are getting better offensively and we don't have to sacrifice our identity and what we're super good at.
Yeah, and I think the story for Atleti is always like, we need to improve and we need our rivals to get a little bit unlucky. And I mean, they might look at Barcelona and think, okay, well, Barcelona, as we'll come on to later, maybe might have some fragilities in defense. And also the second season Flick at Bayern did not go so well. So we'll see what happens there. Real Madrid are going through a period of upheaval. I mean, Neo and I talked about Real Madrid the other day at the Club World Cup, which felt like a sort of test laboratory for Xabi Alonso. Like, let's try a few things out. Let's see what we've got here. I'm not surprised that in the end we haven't seen like major exits from there, even though before the summer we heard the rumors that a midfielder might leave or that Rodrygo might leave. It makes sense to me to just keep everybody there and say, like, what have we got? But now, you were saying before this that you expect them to be one of the most interesting sides in Europe, but that's entirely because of the uncertainty around them in kind of every aspect, right?
Yeah, they've got a lot of really good players. I think that's the starting place for this Real Madrid team, that this is not a Real Madrid team that has like crazy things that need to happen for the squad to be really talented.
Yeah.
There's a lot of good players in different roles, and I think Club World Cup also showed that they can adapt to different shapes, especially playing the back three with Tchouaméni sort of as like this ball playing middle of the back three who can step into midfield if he needs to. Like, that was a really cool look. I think Hausen is sort of slotted right in and is going to be a good fit. I mean, Alaba has sort of been out for a long period of time, and like playing in a back three, maybe for him suits him a lot as being a left of a back three. Like, there's a lot of pieces there that sort of make sense. I think some of the things that are really interesting is this big question on the sort of front group for these guys. Mbappe, Vini, can they do it with both these guys in the team at the same time? I'm sort of leaning towards the answer being no to like that experiment, to how that works, especially if they play 3-5-2 and have no pressure from that front group. I think not that we saw no pressure, but I think we saw that like that Inter Milan team that squared up against PSG, like if you're not really able to generate pressure throughout your whole team and do that, then like you can really get pinned in against these top sides. And Barcelona are one of these top sides that will pin you in within your own league, let alone Champions League. And so I'm looking at Real Madrid going like, well, if they're really serious about changing this to a back three type of formation, and they've got Trent on the right and they've got Carreras coming in on the left, they've got profiles that sort of make sense there. Now Trent's different, very different to what Alonso had in Frimpong as a player, but I think there's sort of a question of like, do they need to change Rodrygo or Vinicius? Because I don't think Mbappe can change. Mbappe was just the leading goal scorer. I think that guy's going to be in the team kind of no matter what. Do you need to change one of Vinicius or Rodrygo to bring in like a true center forward? I know that there were Real Madrid fans sort of talking about that. Like, do we need that sort of option? Maybe not a starting guy, but maybe an option. I think one thing that I'm looking at this Real Madrid team that I'm fascinated by is the midfield. That I think there's a real chance that Jude Bellingham, who is sort of this goal-scoring number 10 maybe 2 seasons ago, could be continued to drop deeper and deeper in the team for more sort of creative playmaking kind of number 10s like Arda Güler and also Mastantuono when he comes in, who is a profile that we sort of talked about earlier. A lot of things similar to Güler. I think Güler looked good at the Club World Cup and looked like a guy that Xabi Alonso is definitely exploring having in the team. What that's going to come at the cost of is these sort of like more frontline wingers and things like that. And so that's a really interesting balance if they go with this very midfield heavy lineup with like, you can see a 3-4-3, something like that with Mbappe at the top of it in a midfield that's sort of Jude and Valverde at the base with Güler. And then like, again, maybe this is a chance for Rodrygo to get back in the team if he decides to stay and not move. We talked a lot about the teams that could be a good fit for Rodrygo elsewhere. That sort of inside left wing on a 3-4-3 shape could also be unbelievable for Rodrygo. If that is a move that they sort of play with, Rodrygo kind of going between being, 3-5-2 as a striker, 3-4-3 as an inside 10, however you want to see that. So there's a lot of moving pieces here that Alonso is going to work on, but he does have time on the training ground and there's options here. So yeah, I'm very interested to see how this sort of moves.
But what you're saying though sounds like Vinicius needs to essentially guarantee his long-term future at Real Madrid, like this season. Like he's playing for his life there, right? Because and probably as well one of the midfielders you could imagine might depart in a year or two, because one of Bellingham, Valverde, Camavinga, like one of these guys is not going to get played as much as they want, and Camavinga's had quite a lot of bench minutes there. I would not be surprised if he's thinking about moving on. But
yeah, it's hard because like you see this midfield shape and you go, well, there's got to be a spot in there for Camavinga. Chomeni, if he gets this center back role, sort of gets into it, so you're less worried about him. But yeah, Camavinga is sort of the one that's not as perfect a fit. If it's a 3-5-2, I still like him for that shape. We'll sort of see. Again, Real Madrid play a lot of games. But yeah, I think it's a big question for Vinicius. Like again, Mbappe sort of because of his goal scoring output, because of his profile, because of what all the hype to get him in, I think he's maybe safe from this. But I think the spotlight is on Vini, on like, if you want to stay here and be the star and really win stuff, like the pressure's on you right now, because there's a lot of things in flux. And I sort of said this and made these comments before we went on, like this is a real period where Real Madrid have both the like player personnel in their squad and a dynamic young coach where they could start to change their style of play long term. Like this is a Real Madrid team that played like they played high block, and then they played low block. They never really sat in a middle block, which is a little bit strange given that they have these guys that are so good in transition. And Xabi Alonso's teams at Leverkusen played more of a high block, and they were really good at it. And I think Real Madrid, when they played high block last year, they were of all their defending, they were best at high block and worst at low block. But they spent a lot of time in low block because if their press got beaten, those guys weren't going to keep, organized repress and whatever. So I wouldn't be surprised if Alonso wants to move towards a more established high block press. That's, again, Barcelona are an ultimate high block team. So moving in that direction isn't like a crazy hard sell right now because that's what the top team is doing. It fits what Alonso was doing previously, and this change of shape. Like if Real Madrid change shape, change how they press in this season, like that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff going on, but it's actually feasible right now in a way that I think it's that change, even though we talk about that happening, is not always feasible. And right now I think it might be. So again, this is, you're hearing how excited I am thinking about this Real Madrid team. It's like, I want to know, like, sometimes I get to this point in the transfer window where I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait for the first month of the season to see lineups, substitution patterns, like changes when they go behind. Like I am really here for it for this Real Madrid team because like, it feels like there's a lot of possibilities. And I mean, I'm actually really excited about like the pressure being on Vini to like step up and really do it, especially coming into a World Cup year.
Yeah.
Because like, dude, step up, be the guy at Real Madrid, be the guy for Brazil, and like prove everyone wrong. Like this is your opportunity. That's super exciting. I think the spotlight there, hopefully he can step up to the plate. That's a really cool prospect.
But you were also talking about the possibility of what you might do if you were in charge of Real Madrid. You mentioned this on Slack that maybe they'd be best off making a big sale and looking for a real nine. Is that? I understand what you're saying. Like they're not gonna do that. They're gonna keep Vinny, and they'll have to just try and make it work. But if you were in charge, would you be scouting the nine market? Because really, when you're looking around, there's kind of only one nine out there who's like the right age and the right standard for Real Madrid.
Well, I think that depends who you're talking about here because there's a few different ideas. But in terms of me just saying that they're going to change to a pressing style of play and do that kind of thing, a guy that had been in Spain and successful previously is Nicolas Jackson in terms of the market. So
that would be super fun.
That's what I'm saying. So there's like there's a little bit of a different element there because like I'm seeing it maybe not as a guy that's going to start at striker every game over Mbappe or something like that. But a game where, okay, we need a bit more offense or we don't need another midfielder. We've got the ball the whole time. Let's go with a striker that will press and run him behind. And then Mbappe's right off that as one of those inside 10s or something like that. I think that's a real option that they like should be considering. I think part of me is like, do you do that right now? Or is this like a wait till maybe not January, but like next year? Like you're kind of seeing how it plays out with Vinny and having that opportunity. Again, that's the hard thing that's not easy to assess when you're not like in the environment and being like, you know what, let's really go with this. Because like there is also the risk of having a new coach in that like he's still getting to know the players and decide what he wants to do. And so like taking that really big risk. But like I do think that there is a real world in which like you just go, we can't carry all of these guys that want to do the same thing. We tried it. They wanted to do the same thing when we put them in the team together. Like we need someone to move to then bring in something different. I think that's like pretty realistic, but I don't know if they're going to get to that point before the transfer window closes.
Yeah, I mean, you also would want to sell at this point in the market, right? Rather than after a year where everyone's like, well, obviously Real Madrid are going to want to sell one of these guys. But I do think, as I mentioned up top, the big teams, I think, will be sniffing around Real Madrid next year because any time that a team changes to such a different setup, they've obviously got to rebalance their squad. Like Real Madrid are going to need more centre-backs. They're going to need slightly fewer attackers, maybe slightly fewer midfielders. It might be an opportunity for somebody to pick up Camavinga or someone next year. Like if Manchester City, for example, next year were like, okay, well, Rodry's been back for a year, but he's going to be closing in on 31. We want to go and get Camavinga or something like that. That'd be quite exciting. But so I'm intrigued to see how Real Madrid season goes. I know that Xavi has more latitude to change stuff than most coaches, and I'm sure he will have been very forceful on this point with Florentino Perez. But this needs commitment, and if they don't get some good early returns, it could get, I don't know, like the pressure gets on, it gets kind of scary. So I'm interested in Real Madrid. I'm interested to see who leaves. Shall we talk about Barcelona? Because Barcelona, considerably less room for maneuver this summer. Obviously, they're trying to print some money. You know, like they're waiting to get this 100 mil signed off, right, for the VIP seats in the Camp Nou, which like they've still been building. That needs to happen in order for them to register Rashford. They've already been having problems for like the third time now with Dani Olmo, and they probably would like to get a defender in at some point as well. But it just doesn't really seem like they're going to be able to do it. And it kind of feels like they're going to have to go again with Rashford and Joan Garcia, and that might be it.
Which, like, I think the Joan Garcia one was a really smart move. I mean, again, I don't know exactly how the money works and that kind of thing, but brought in a keeper that was on FBref as the top keeper on their sort of goal saved above average shot stopping metrics this past year. You know, good age, playing in the league. I think everyone's pretty much like, that all makes a lot of sense. That is something that they need. We've talked about having them not need Chesney in goal is a good thing. Not having to rely on him for significant minutes is going to be a good thing. And
so the thing that Garcia is weak at, right, is like doing stuff outside his box, which like Barcelona. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like if you can walk briskly, then you're probably going to be slightly better at that than Chesney was this last season. But that is his weak area, and it is the thing that Barcelona ask keepers to do more than any other team in Europe, right?
Yeah, well, with Hansi Flick's style, right? And that was sort of the thing at the end of the year. The reason Barcelona didn't get over the line and wasn't in the Champions League final, things like that, was because they were really so depleted at the back. Like they never stopped creating chances and, you know, causing moments of excitement. That never really stopped. But defensively, like they had guys going down with injury and they were shorthanded. They were having just young guys covering minutes. And I think if you're looking at it going like, that's, you know, are you guys going to bring in a defender? That's sort of a big question mark. But the Rashford one, I think for me, like maybe through foggy glasses or maybe through something else, like you can see the world in which it works. You can see the Rashford that makes runs in behind, gives them a threat when they do look to transition. If he can do the pressing and not be a liability on that front in the way that like you can see him being like an alternative to Rafinha that can cover some minutes at striker should they need it. Ferran Torres sort of did that for them this year. You can kind of see the world in which it works. And you're also a little bit scared because he's on a pretty good whack of money. And if he doesn't work and doesn't do the defending side, well, that's pretty much a non-negotiable. I mean, this Barcelona team, they press a lot and they create a lot of chaos. They for a Barcelona team where we're used to seeing just organized, controlled play, there's a lot more chaos in their games than sort of previous iterations. And that sort of relies on these players that when things get crazy, they're willing to do the hard work and they're really willing to put themselves about for the team. And so, you know, I think that's the challenge for Rashford, with the flip side of like, you can see how it could work out for them in a really good way.
Yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about Rashford as well. I think the fact that he maybe thought he was going to be left on the shelf this window, but was holding out for Barcelona and now has got that move. I do think he's likely to turn up thinking, I'm going to show everyone, I'm going to work really hard. It's a dream move. Like there's a lot there to motivate him. And actually, like defensively, okay, very limited minutes, but he was much better defensively for Emery at Villa last season than he had been ever really at Manchester United, both in volume of defensive actions and in the success of those defensive actions. So, you know, he's obviously played a lot of his Man United career as well in totally dysfunctional sides. So maybe being told where to be, what to do, how to do it, like might honestly be a relief, like rather than just like kind of doing, like we haven't really seen him play under a coach who it feels is going to take charge of that and really give him strong instruction. Or at least not since the like Van Gaal days when he was really, really young, and a little bit Mourinho.
Yeah, I'm like, again, I would have put myself in the optimistic camp. I think there's also the World Cup looming in the background there. Like he was in the early squads for Tuchel. if you're playing well at Barcelona and you've got an English passport, you're going to be in that team. Yeah. So I think there's every motivation there. There's every opportunity. And I think Rashford is a player of the quality to be able to do it. It's just that like, we're not saying he's going in at a team that presses at 80th percentile level. Like this is 100% full commitment, back line is past the halfway line. They are going, they are aggressive, and Rashford needs to be able to come in and like match that. Well, like the other things that he does well, I think will contribute to the team. It's can he do it on that defensive side of the ball? And so, yeah, it's a really interesting one. But I think with Rashford, there is a little bit of this conversation around like a guy that has such superlative attributes in his profile and then has areas where he's not as strong. Like, how can we get the most out of that? And sometimes I think, and whether this is like the age of just throwing too many metrics in the filter or what, like, I think the beauty of football as a team game is that it's having guys that can do something so superlatively and have weaknesses while other guys do a bit of everything, and balancing all of this together in a team. And sometimes my sort of feeling a little bit is that there is this trend of these coaches. I mean, we've talked a lot about Luis Enrique demanding that these guys all sort of defend really hard, and Dembele setting the tone for that as maybe the best player in the team. That's sort of the trend right now. I think we see something similar from Vincent Kompany. I think we see something similar from a lot of the top Premier League coaches, Enzo Maresca. Like that sort of feels like a lot of what's being asked. And you kind of wonder now, like, are there opportunities for these guys with real star power, real standout qualities to find a team that can really make it work with them? Like, that's a little bit the question with Rashford. Can his superlative attributes be taken advantage of if he improves a little bit on the thing that's a non-negotiable for the team? One guy that's sort of, you mentioned at the very start here, that's still on the table for that is Rafael Leao, who's still at AC Milan.
Yeah, Rafael Leao. So okay, he's very different from Rashford, but in a way, some of the stuff is similar here, right? You're like, this guy has these abilities. Like last season, a little bit of a down season, at least in the top line numbers, like 16 goal involvements in the league. That's his worst campaign since 2020, 2021. But he's been consistently kind of 0.6 expected goals and assists per 90 for a while now, for like 3 years. And the rumors are that like you can get him for a reasonable rate, like I guess 70, 80 million. Like he's just turned 26. He's the perfect test case for this, right? Because he literally does not defend at all, but he does everything else that you could possibly want an attacker ever to do. Like, he is a plus progressive passer. He's an amazing ball carrier. He gets reasonable numbers of shots. Like, he's incredibly creative and in lots of different ways. Like he will drive to the byline and get a pullback. He will play a through ball. He will whip across to the back post. I mean, he can kind of do pretty much everything. Last season was his worst dribbling season and was still crazy, like right at the top for his position. He drives you upfield. He drives you into the box. He doesn't even get dispossessed that much. Like when you think how much he's taking people on, like everything goes through him there. And then you look at his defensive work rate, and FBref have him in the 6th percentile for tackles and interceptions per 90. But somebody must be tempted to take a risk on this guy, surely. If it doesn't happen now, when is it going to happen?
Yeah, and he's such a weapon. And maybe it is like, again, you go like, oh, well, this would be a no-brainer for a team that's maybe just outside the sort of top 4 that has crazy money, like Newcastle. But Eddie Howe's not going to take that guy, right? Like Eddie Howe's got Anthony Gordon, Harvey Barnes running their socks off. So they're not going to. So this is sort of where I'm saying, like, the trend is that these guys are not as in. And like Rafael Leao is really interesting to me because like he is your guy that wants to come deep, get the ball without pressure, see the game, and then just like beat people, create off of it. Again, you're saying all these things he can do, but like he's not coming to help you get out of the back. He's not helping you like navigate your way when the team's got 2 blocks of midfield in front and he's going to solve that problem. Like he's helping you in transition, running in space. He's not doing tons of off-ball running when you're deeper. Like when you get into the final third, like it's on, and he's better than almost everybody. But like it's the missing in those other pieces that you as a coach have to be sort of comfortable with. And then again, you go, okay, well then do we need such like a great player in the midfield to cover some of that? Well, then all of a sudden our team starts to get very like individual player roles instead of sort of a group that can sort of cover for itself and have the proper depth. So I hear the balancing issue there. Like, but it is really interesting because his superlative traits and the things that he can do are the things that, like, especially if you're a top team looking to just take that little bit, especially in your starting lineup, to add traits and output that other people don't have. It does seem like teams have shied towards these wingers that can be sort of winger inside 10. They hustle a bit more on defense, maybe not the same like peak athletic traits, but they play a bit more defense and, you know, do a bit more of the combining and passing that helps you get up the field in deeper areas. And so one player that's sort of rumored in the past week or so has been Xavi Simon's linked to Chelsea. Again, Chelsea have like a number of these guys that sort of, he fits that sort of profile. They've got a lot of guys that look kind of like this, but you know, that's a player that is being talked about at maybe a similar price point, plays sort of a similar area on the field. But I would say the like public perception of that player and the chances that he could move for that price is much higher right now than Leao, who, if you look at, you know, goal involvements, you look at some of these things, is not really very different.
Yeah, this is the thing. Like when the prices are getting to like, you know, 55 million for Anthony Elanga, 68 million for Eberechi Eze, 70 million euros for Xavi Simons, then I just think, I understand that Arsenal and Chelsea and Barcelona and Bayern Munich, the clubs that wanted a left winger this summer, that they have a different thing in mind. They need somebody who's going to defend there. You know, I think in Arsenal's case, like in Chelsea's case, they've gone and got Gittins, and they think, right, he can be like our kind of outside left winger. In Arsenal's case, it feels like they kind of think, well, we've got Martinelli, we need a different sort of player who would balance with Calafiori a bit more. But once the prices get that high for guys who I think are undeniably vastly inferior on the ball, as much as you might like them, and I pretty much like all three of those players. But Leao is like a dynamite game breaker, just on a totally different level. Like he can run your attack by himself. And I just think like for this kind of price, like if the price is 70, 80, and the wages, as you were saying earlier, are actually like fairly reasonable, do you not just take the guy with all the tools and say, maybe we can teach him just to defend a little bit more? But nobody we can target is going to raise the ceiling the way that Leao does. Like a bunch of these guys are like maintain the floor, maybe raise the ceiling a bit. Like if you go and sign Xavi Simons, he might make you quite a lot better. Like maybe he would make Arsenal or Chelsea way better, but he might not. He might keep you about the same level. What he's not going to do is make the bottom fall out. Whereas Leao might turn you into genuine. Like if you had like Leao and Isak for Newcastle, you had Leao and, you know, Palmer for Chelsea, Leao and Olise for Bayern, Leao and Saka for Arsenal, then you're just like, how do you defend this? This is just absolutely impossible to defend. But maybe your press falls apart and you just give up a bunch of cheap goals and then you're kind of screwed.
It requires a coach to be really excited about those man-up attacking situations. And maybe this is the challenge here, is that like the demand on strikers is super high. We've seen how challenging it is in this sort of striker market, that teams are sort of like, well, we don't really have that striker that we're 100% sure is going to put away all these man-up situations. So we don't want to leave ourselves exposed like defensively and defending in those moments. And that's the risk. But yeah, I think teams should be really considering it, taking a look at it. I don't know exactly. Like, I think Leao's wages aren't crazy. So there's not a ton of pressure on AC Milan to like get him out the door. We've sort of talked previously about Juventus and some of these guys that have big numbers attached to them. I think kind of notably Dusan Vlahovic or something like that. Like Leao's not on the same kind of money that hurts AC Milan. I think AC Milan is very happy to have Rafael Leao, but like there are probably top teams that could get more use and go further in sort of European competition and in their leagues this year. Not to say that I actually think there's plenty to be interested in AC Milan this year. That's maybe a different conversation, but I think that there are top teams that are looking to spend a lot of money that have sort of like pushed Leao as like, well, he doesn't fit these couple things. And it's like, you know, God, it's hard in the Premier League, and getting a few more of those man up situations where he can beat someone, where he can deliver a ball that most defenders can't reach. That's definitely appealing. So I don't know if that's going to shake up and change. Like, it does sort of feel like with, you sort of talked about Elanga and Kudus and a number of these guys moving for these sort of fees. It does sort of feel like the teams with the opportunity and the budget to be able to do it might be decreasing. But we get to the back end of the window and there's a team looking for this position that is a top player that can really do something. So
Yeah.
One that I'm definitely keeping my eye on here.
Yeah, like obviously the price is considerably higher, but in the end, I sort of feel the way I did about Khan Sheki, where you're like, I see all the problems for Sheki, but I also see all the good stuff. And the good stuff is so good that at a certain point, if the price is reasonable enough, you just got to do it and figure it out later. And if you are a team that is like, okay, Barcelona and Bayern, maybe not, but for a team that is much more conservative, like Arsenal, like Chelsea are heading, like, then you think, can you not like make this guy work? Like, you probably can, just by taking fewer risks in midfield or something. That's fine. Like, honestly, it's worth it for getting Leao on the pitch. But as just a fan, I want to see him go to a side which can compete for bigger trophies this summer. That is not Milan at the moment. And maybe as well, he's been like the king of Milan for a while. Maybe going to another club where he's not going to be the nailed on superstar would help with this in some way.
Yeah. It's definitely an interesting sort of look, because I think we're all pretty clear that if he goes, the lower down team he could go to is going to be totally comfortable with it, but he's not going to be in a position to really be competing at the top. And his peak skill set, he does have the ability to do that and contribute to one of those teams. And again, those game breaking guys are rare. And yeah, I think we'll just leave it on a team like Arsenal, because like, I think there's a really good point here of like, again, when Arsenal weren't scoring goals, it wasn't because there just wasn't a big body in the box to stick a leg out or get a head on it or something like that, right? It's like, it's because they weren't able to get those man up situations on the other side, and Saka was getting double teamed, triple teamed,
sure.
The space clogged up. And like, you're like, it might not be every game, but there are games where having that guy just like wins you games. And so, yeah, we'll see. Keep an eye on Rafael Leao. Rafael Leao
Yeah.
watch is back, people. It is back.
I'm pumped. Okay, right. Before we get out of here, I just want to drop another plug here for the Premier League previews that will be coming out shortly. We're previewing every Premier League side. And if you want to check those out, then you can subscribe. For £10, you get access to all 20 Premier League previews. So I think it's a pretty reasonable price for the amount of analysis that will be coming your way.
I think for newer listeners, like, this is not like a new thing, that like this is something that StatsBomb used to do with James York, that they did for like a decade or so, and was like pretty consistently the best thing every summer. So like, as someone who now gets to chat with these folks on the inside, like, I would say this is something I used to follow for years. Working in clubs, like, everyone in teams are reading these articles. Like, this is like the information. I know how hard folks are working behind the scenes to make these good. I would very strongly recommend it. This is not like a new, hey, we got a podcast, so let's talk about it. This is something that there's about 10 years of experience. There's going to be some really good writers. I'm looking forward to taking advantage of that, at least.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed these as well. Like, this is some of the stuff that helped me get into football analytics. Yeah. So if you're interested, then please consider supporting us by subscribing to that. Hayden, thank you very much for being here today and for running me through these interesting stories. Where can people get more of your opinions as we approach the beginning of the season? It's not too far away now. It's like a month off, slightly less.
Yeah, it's coming in fast. It's fun seeing these random preseason friendlies and which players are playing with who and getting on the field, just getting their legs going again. But yeah, I'm H. Van Brewer on Blue Sky. I'll be watching all of these things. And as you heard, very switched on to La Liga to start this year. There's a lot of La Liga storylines from this summer that I'm like really excited about. I think I didn't realize it until we sort of prepped for this episode, how much shakeup there could really be and how much like cool stuff could happen, especially early in the season.
I couldn't agree more. And we'll be covering it all right here. Thank you very much for listening or watching. Make sure that you like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube. And we will catch you all next week. Bye-bye.